Okay, welcome back. The tables have turned. Today you are interviewing me. So I think this is literally our third episode together. And we filmed a potty last week. And I think all of us, at the end of the recording, I had this I think because I kept referring everything back to me in that episode, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I need a therapy session with you. And I think your partner as well and yourself said at the same time, you were like, oh, I should be interviewing you next time for something different. And I was like, oh, that's not something that I have thought about before, I think, because I'm always like, oh, I want to give back as much as I can to the listeners. But I feel like through my experience and stories, I feel like that's my way of giving back as well. So how do you feel? Ready to get into it?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to it all day as well.
Yeah,
Even since we
same.
spoke about it at the end of the last podcast. You talk about, you've got this really big desire to and want to give back to others. I think sometimes the most powerful way we can give back to others by sharing our actual experiences and life stories, because then people can, resonate and connect from that level. I think it's going to be a really beautiful.
Yeah, it's funny you say that as well, because I've always found it really hard, or when I am doing a podcast by myself, to kind of share my journey and my experiences, because you're just talking to a camera. And so I feel like this will be a really beautiful way on, I guess, unpacking a few things and being able to do it in a safe space as well. So yeah, I'm super excited / a little bit nervous.
Yeah, and nerves are normal. I think, it's really... It creates a safe space when we normalise the nerves that are showing up for you, because we're, about to tap into some of your experiences and ask you questions that may be a little bit confronting. And so let's normalise that.
Yeah.
First and foremost, and just on the basis of this is just the chat, we allow it to go wherever it needs to go, or wherever you feel safe for it to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Something that I always start with is create a little basis or structure of where we can lead into. So I think a really powerful place to start would be, for you to share a little bit about your life, your journey, in particular your childhood. What was your relationship like with your parents? What was your relationship like if you have siblings? Because all of that matters.
Yeah.
Some of us might think it doesn't, but it actually does.
Yeah.
And then through that sharing of your story, it might be some things that are highlighted for me that I can ask you some other questions on. And then, is there any obstacles you're facing in your life right now? And I think that a really important part that often people miss is commitment. At the end of this exploration, it's like, hey, what am I committed to from the realizations I've had?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really basic structure that we can go with for the
I
next
think that's
45
fantastic. Yeah. I'm really excited for this. I feel like more so just to learn a little bit deeper on myself as well and have, I guess, the right questions asked. But my response to your question, a little bit about me. So where do I even start? I think I'll start with my childhood, because I feel like that really sums up everything, really. So mum and dad split when I was 3 years old, and it was a very, I guess, I wouldn't say physically abusive. There probably would have been definitely some lines overstepped with that, but I think more it was emotional and verbal abuse. And I would almost say abandonment towards mum, even though they were still together. And I think I was when I came into the relationship and when I was born, dad formed this, I think, jealousy around me being there and didn't have mum's attention. So there was always from a young age so much fighting, and I can remember being a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, hearing these fights and seeing the things, and I can almost remember every single word that was said, every movement that was made, what I was wearing and where I was standing when it happened, which I find is crazy, which I'm sure you can unpack. So that's a summary of the first 3 years of my life. I'm sure there were beautiful moments that my mum and dad had, but for me, all I can remember is the pain and the anxiety and the stress that mum had in that relationship. And then we kind of went on our journey, and mum separated from dad, but my relationship with dad was so on and off and only on his terms. And very, I almost was like treated as the issue and the problem in the relationship. So if I didn't fit into his schedule or his life, it was like, oh, it's not, you're not worth it essentially. So, and then there was like, it's so hard to like summarize a relationship with my family. But there was probably like 4 pivotal moments of my life with the relationship with my father that made me be like, what am I doing this for? Why do I still have contact with my father? Like there were almost times where the police were called, Mum had to press charges on him. You know, there was restraining orders been thrown around, but there was always like this cycle of me wanting to forgive and like wanting to have the love of my father. And I kept chasing in the hope and hoping that there would be the love that I deserved, but never really got to see it. And then that's when that cycle would like repeat. It would be like really good for a short period of time, maybe like 2 to 3 years. And then there'd be like this, I always used to say to Mum, and I probably like preempt it, but gosh, like I'm kind of just waiting for the shit thing to happen for him to let me down, which I don't think is probably fair for me to say, but it was just so regular that there would be something that would happen. But yeah, so there was 4 pivotal moments in my relationship with him. And then Mum and I were like super close, very, very close throughout my whole upbringing. So she never ever dated anyone while she was raising me. She was very focused on giving me the best life that she could. And we pretty much grew up as best friends, but we did fight a lot. Mum did see probably a lot of frustration from me and anger that I had towards, I guess, maybe my upbringing or my father. And then going into high school and all stuff like that, I'm dyslexic and I struggled a lot at school. And I think in year like 8 or 9, the relationship with my dad like flared up as well. And then there was lots of like, I started having intimate relationships and making questionable decisions. And then, yeah, that kind of like summarizes bits and pieces of my life. But does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it gives me some insight to how your life potentially is playing out today.
Yeah.
And maybe you've done some work, or maybe there's still some work there to be done.
Yeah.
There's a few things that stood out to me, and I'd just like to ask some questions. And the first word was boundary. What do you like with boundaries today?
I think from the work that I have done, and I guess like the trainings that I've done, I have definitely got better with my boundaries. I think sometimes you definitely do fall back into the pattern of maybe people pleasing or not having a strong boundary, but boundaries up until I was like 25 did not exist. And yeah, I gave everything that I had to everyone else. And then I would question myself and be like, well, why am I anxious? And why, like, I ended up being at one point in my life, like agoraphobic, where you can't leave the house. And I was like, I call Mum and I'd be like, I don't understand like why this is happening to me. And I just feel like I was always giving and trying for everyone else, but not myself.
Yeah, you know, you talked about, you know, connect the dots for you, which sounds like you've already connected them, but for people that might be listening, you know, you talked about the relationship that you had with your dad as a little girl, and it's like everything had to fit into his schedule. And if it didn't fit into his schedule, then it meant whatever it meant for you. And it's like if that was a pattern that was created in your childhood and you continue to play in it, you know, when in adult life, when things don't fit into others' schedule, it's replicating your childhood. So it's like, what does it mean for Jamila when schedules don't align? What happens inside of your body, and what does it mean for you?
This is something that I struggled in all of my relationships. Especially one, I would almost like rage. Like I would explain it like my heart would like start like going crazy. I'd get a really red neck and sweaty palms, and I would literally just want to be like blow off the handle. And it was always something that I was like, why are you like that? Why just let him go out and be with the boys? Or I think it was more so like if you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it, I'm like, does not sit well with me at all. And it's something that in my current relationship too, if he's like 10 minutes late, I'm like, where are you? But that's obviously something that I've done a lot of work on. But it's more so the feelings that I get still to this day if something doesn't go to plan or someone doesn't do what they say that they're going to do. I get like this inner turmoil of like, you don't matter, really, if you unpack it.
Yeah. So if your current partner doesn't do what he says he's going to do, you know, these feelings come up in your body, and the story that you tell yourself is you don't matter. And it's to connect that back to, you know, what you were sharing about your father. You know, it's like back here when you didn't fit into his schedule, little Jamila doesn't matter. So that's what you did receive back there in your childhood, and which is now has been shown for, you know, your adult life, even maybe potentially still today.
Definitely.
But what she did receive as little Jamila, what was it that she actually needed?
What did I need? I needed my dad to show up. I needed him to say what he was going to do. I needed him to come to my dance classes. I needed him to pick me up from school. I needed him to give me a hug and tell me that I'm not the issue.
Yeah.
That's what I needed.
So you needed your dad to show up. So another way of saying that could potentially be you wanted your dad to be present in your life. Yeah.
Definitely.
Another way of saying what you said lastly would be like to say that I'm enough. Yeah.
Definitely.
And to give, little Jamila wanted her dad to give her a hug. So my question and reflection back for you now is like, how often are you deeply and consciously present for yourself in your own life?
It's so interesting that you asked that question, because I have this conversation with myself quite often, and it's been as of late where I'll notice myself picking up the phone more than often, or more than so often. And then I'll be like, just be with yourself. Like, what are you running from? Like, life's good. Business is good. You've got a great, you know, circle of friends. But there is definitely this like avoidance in me that I've noticed, especially lately. And it's almost like I want to silence the time where I have to reflect. And I'm someone that I feel like I'm very open to reflecting and talking and unpacking and learning. Like I feel like that's why I've been put on this earth, is to be able to do that. Like I love that. But I definitely feel like there's an avoidance to my deeper self and my my inner child. And I think for me as well, like the question's been coming up a lot because Dad isn't in my life at the moment, because I guess of both of our choices. And I think I sit with guilt with that sometimes too. And then I feel like I become avoidant to that guilt. I'm like, no, don't think about it. It's fine. It's better if you just don't unpack it. And then for me, obviously, with the work that I do and how I'm helping people, I'm like, how can you help people if you're avoiding the deepest part of you that you need to connect with?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because I am definitely, I don't know if that answered your question, but I am definitely in some way avoiding my unconscious, like, for sure.
Here and you know, you said the word guilt. We'll come back to the guilt, but I just want to come back to that sentence that you prefaced into space. You know, you ponder on, what am I running from? So before you even answer, maybe sit with that for a moment. And what is it that you're actually running from?
Pain, my emotions, sadness. I think maybe I feel like I've felt enough that I'm like, I don't want to keep feeling this. And I think as I get older, and obviously, you know, you're in a relationship, marriage becomes a thing, kids become a thing, you get older, people that you love start to fade out of your life. And I think that's been sitting with me a lot is, you know, I even asked myself the question the other day, would I go to my dad's funeral? Like, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
And so lots of things have been coming up for me. But then it's like, we won't go there today. I'll just wait.
Yeah. There's a yes and a no coming up for me. And part of that is around, you know, you spoke about even today when your partner doesn't show up and do the things that he said he's going to do. There's still these emotions that flow through your body. And potentially that's connected back to that. He's not present with me. So he's like, okay, I'm not going back to, I'm running from, because I am enough now. And I believe that to be true. And there's still a part of you that says, I'm not enough. You know, that sentence that was repeated back to you and shown back to you as that little girl. So it's like when I asked you, what are you running from? I'm running from the pain and the hurt that little girl experienced. And as long as we keep running from it and being non-present in our life, we'll continue to create more pain and more hurt, aka that feeling you get in your body when he doesn't show up in what he said he was going to do. So we're recreating the thing that we're actually running from.
So we're self-sabotaging in a way. Yeah.
Potentially, if it's landing for you.
Yeah. No, that lands for me 100%. I guess it's also something for me to reflect on and maybe dive into a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of goes back to what you said in the last podcast, is like creating that safe space to feel it. Because I think there was a question like, you know, how do you kind of process that stuff? I can't remember exactly what you said, but like I think giving myself the space and the grace to feel it.
Creating some space, or a safe space, for you to go back and sit in that hurt and that pain.
That's right. Yeah.
To process that hurt and that pain. Because whilst you avoid it, that hurt and that pain will unconsciously continue to be recreated in your adult life today. And a lot of your pain is created from non-presence, and what you actually want is presence. But you're continuously creating non-presence again, which is the byproduct that is more hurt and pain.
Literally. That's wild. And even like when you say that, I get like this, I actually have a pit of like, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's anxiety, I can't explain it, but there's a feeling in my tummy where it's like, oh, like a sick feeling.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, I don't.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny, I always feel like I am someone that will feel my emotions and I'm present with that. But like I said, I've definitely been avoidant to that. And I actually remember like 2 years ago, Dad and I stopped talking. It was such a bizarre situation. And I remember saying to my partner, I was like, no, I'm sweet. Like I feel all good. And I was kind of like, why am I not feeling anything? And I think like a year and a half after, I was like, oh, like stabbed me in the guts. And I think I'm really starting to process that. Yeah, in the last 6 months as well.
Yeah. All of us run on patterns. You know, you talked about avoiding hurt and pain. And if I was to feel what's happening between me and my dad, that equates to hurt and pain. So the pattern for hurt and pain for Jamila is to avoid it. So it's like, oh no, I'm actually sweet. It's a coping mechanism that you've created for yourself to keep yourself safe, but also an avoidance of the pain that you don't want to go back and feel again.
Wow. Yeah, when you say it like that, because I was like, oh, maybe, like fight or flight, just like protecting me. Like I don't feel anything towards it. And I honestly feel as well now that I'm in a safe relationship and I am being able to, I guess like we have open conversations about emotions and what's happening. I almost feel like this is why, like my partner will often ask me like, do you think you'll ever speak to your dad again? Or like, how are you feeling lately about it? And I'm like, I haven't thought about it, but now that you're saying that. And I definitely can see how the avoidance is my protection. Yeah.
Potentially a more empowering way to phrase that question is, do you want to speak to your father again?
My chest literally just went inwards. Do I have to answer that?
If you want to.
Literally the first words that want to come out is just fuck no. But then I have these thoughts of like, will I regret it? Or like, you know, when he does leave this earth, how am I going to cope with that?
Yeah. Before we go to the intellectualizing everything in like buts.
Yeah.
Let's just quickly sit with that fuck no and honor that.
That's hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening right now. Can you see it? Yeah, it's very powerful. Like I almost could scream it.
Yeah. And even right now, this is an assumption that I'm starting to make is even you wanting to continue to talk is you in avoidance of the sitting with the fuck no.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot.
And we don't even have to unpack the fuck no, but something that's really important for all of us is, okay, the initial response was the fuck no, and then we bypass that. And it's often the people that are deeply in the work. It's a coping mechanism to bypass what's deep at the core of us. It's okay, let's, before we get to the stuff that maybe we want to get to, let's sit with what's at the core and view the core as fuck no. Beautiful. Let's sit with that and process all of that fuck no. And then pass on the other side of the fuck no could be something else for you. Okay, now we'll process that. And then we'll process the next thing. And potentially we might get to the absolutely, I'd love to have a relationship with my dad. But until you honour and process the fuck no, this is going to be that 3-year circle or span that you've talked about with your dad, your whole life will continue to revolve.
Yeah. Wow. That is so powerful. And I feel like the way you just said that, because for me, towards the end of like the 3-year cycle, so much rage came up, like so much. Like I remember even as a young girl, Dad actually said to me one day, "You've got demons inside you." And I was like, "No, it's you." Like I did go to the blame and maybe potentially sit in the poor me mentality, but it always ended with like this rage. And now that you're saying that, I don't think I've ever processed that rage or felt it.
Yeah.
Whoa. And it's one thing, like I go to see this Chinese doctor and I guess I love holistic healing and I'm very open to it. And he always says to me every time I see him yearly at the start of the year just for like a refresh. He does like acupuncture, needling, cupping, all of that stuff. And he always says to me, he's like, "Why are you so angry? Who are you angry at?" And I was like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
He's like, "You've got so much rage."
Yeah. Well, there's rage probably above that hurt and that pain that you talked about, that you've been in avoidance the entirety of your life. And probably below that, and amongst that would be all that sadness. So the rage is protecting all that sadness. And, you know, you've shown us just in this conversation today that you have a pattern of bypassing or avoiding. And that's why every 3 years the circle comes around. It's like, okay, it's 3 years of all that sadness, but it's masked with the hurt and the pain, but ultimately the rage is what you're expressing. It's like, hey, let's start honouring all of these parts of what's going on inside of you and what the little girl experienced.
It's funny because now I'm starting to feel sad. I don't know if it works that fast, but even you just saying like honouring that little girl, I'm like, oh wow. Like I've never thought about it. I've always done like inner child healing and connecting with her, but I feel like I outsmart myself sometimes, if that makes sense. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, no worries, I'll go there. and they'll be like, oh, you there? I'm like, I'm here. Yeah.
Let's continue with this presence. You know, let's go back again to the little girl, and it's like, okay, the little girl wanted presence from her dad. Are you able to reflect now, or maybe you've already reflected on this? What would be a sentence that little girl wanted to hear from her dad that equated, "I am present with you"?
I don't know why this is coming to me, but the first thing that came to me was, "I can't wait to watch you grow up." I don't know why. I think maybe that's like, he'll be there for me, potentially.
Yeah. I can't wait to watch you grow up. Is what the little girl wanted to hear from her dad, which would mean I'm present with you. Yeah.
Well.
Today, in this present moment, let's just reflect over the last 7 days. How often is adult Jamila just looking at her life and just observing and noticing how beautiful it is and all that's actually going on? Or is she already in the next moment?
She's probably already in the next moment. I think I've gotten better with like being like, wow, like my life is incredible. Like I have beautiful family, a beautiful partner, like I'm doing the things that I love. But I actually I think I kind of mentioned this before. There's like this block of like I can't continue long term doing this work unless I fully unpack what that block is. And I think that's been on my mind like for a couple of years, to be honest.
Yeah.
But in the last 7 days.
Yeah. Whilst you're in the next moment, you're mirroring your childhood of non-presence.
While you're in your next moment, you're mirroring your...
So in your adult life today, you just spoken the words of, probably in the next moment. And my response internally for that was, of course, because it's familiar to be in the next moment and not present with this one. Because the little girl experienced a non-present dad. So it's actually safer for you to be in the next moment rather than being here in this present moment. So a really subtle but simple way for you to start not only practicing presence today in your life, but also to heal the wound of the little girl, is to start being here in the moment and honouring this moment. And as you honour this moment consistently and frequently, you're not only being here, but you're also healing all that hurt and pain. Therefore, in non-avoidance, you're going back to address what was in your childhood.
Wow. I feel like so much as you were talking then, just like unraveled. Like I visualized it like unraveling. Sorry, I'm just like sitting with that. I'm like, whoa, I guess, kind of unpacking it. Even for me, like if I reflect back, I'm always in a rush, or like always, when I was younger, I definitely wasn't present in conversations either.
Yep.
So that kind of like unpacked for me too. And I used to question myself, like when I get home, I'd be like, why didn't I just listen more? Or why didn't I show up more? But it was always like I was on to the next thing.
So because you've had that conversation with yourself, there's awareness around it.
Yeah.
Has there been times in your life, I'm going to start being more present in my own life and honouring the now moment? And then a week or 2 weeks later, you're like, I've been doing the same thing again.
Yeah, 100%. If I think about it now, yeah.
So it comes back to patterns, and patterns are created through practice. So it's like, rather than trying to be present in your life all day, every day, let's just go back to 3 30-second slots every single day. Okay, I'm going to be present for this 30 seconds in the morning. I'm going to be present for this 30 seconds at lunchtime. And I'm going to be present for this 30 seconds in the evening. That's a minute and a half that you've been in practice of deep presence. And then you amplify that to 2 minutes. And then we amplify it to 5 times every 2 minutes. And then eventually you've created a pattern of being present in your own life on a daily basis. At the same time healing the wound of that little girl who had non-presence.
It's so, sorry, I looked at you like really intensely, then I'm like, whoa. I always say to my partner, like when we have our conversations of like, how can I show up for you? Like what was happening, da-da-da. I spoke a lot about that in the last episode. Where was I going with that? I would always like say like, he's not present enough. And now that I'm sitting here and you've kind of like unpacked that, like, am I present? I'm so focused on him not.
Yep. And because you have a lens where you have a wound of non-presence, therefore you have a lens of the world of non-presence. When non-presence shows up externally, it hurts you. It triggers you and it pisses you off. And what comes from that without awareness to that trigger and that lens of non-presence is you're now going to create disconnect. Therefore, this person that's so important to you is going to end up being non-present. So you actually push them away to the point of absolutely not present at all.
It's so funny you say that. Like I speak about this with my clients all the time, and then I'm like in the back of my head, I may be guilty of that sometimes. I mean, like we're only human.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I can, when I teach, I feel like sometimes I feel like I teach, or what was the saying I was going to say? You say the things that you need to hear the most sometimes. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to come back to that.
Often I'm in workshops or retreats or online programs and even conversations like this, and I'm speaking, giving advice, and I'm actually speaking that advice back to myself.
Yeah.
So I think it's human. We all experience that. And I get to see things, and I see things either because I've experienced it myself or I'm actually needing to preach that back to myself.
That's special in itself.
Yeah. It's also a really beautiful way to connect with people that you're supporting, because authenticity
Yes.
is the deepest way to connect with others. And if
That's
I
so
sit here and say that I've got everything together, people will feel that, whether I say it or not, through an energetic level. If I sit there and just be completely open and honest, I'm like, and this is where I'm also at, and I'm also working through this right now, people are like,
It's like, oh,
and they feel more connected to you.
I was going to say almost like I feel more safe. Like when someone says that, I'm like, oh, I don't have to meet you at your level. Like
Exactly.
I can work my way to where I need to be.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to touch on one more point. You know,
Yeah,
you had
go
those
for it.
3 points regarding your dad, and you said, I just wanted my dad to hug me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when was the last time, or how often did Jamila meet herself in the energetic frequency or love of a hug for herself?
Never. I mean, like I go to yoga and they're like, hug yourself and like do the little rolly thing, but that's about it.
Yeah. And again, my response, internal response to that was, of course, because the little girl didn't receive a hug, and today she still wants that hug from her dad.
And it's the same thing I'll always say to my partner, like bless my partner, he just surrenders to it and he'll be like, yeah, no worries, babe, I'll give you a hug like 10 times. Be like, hey, can you hug me? I just hugged you, but yeah, I'll hug you again.
Yeah. So you want that hug to be added value to your life,
Yeah.
not needed value.
Yeah.
And a way to ensure it's added value is you start meeting yourself in your own hug. Okay, now I've healed the wound. I'm not looking externally for this to be met. I've met it internally. So now your hug or your how you're meeting me is added value. I don't need it anymore. So when I don't receive it, I don't fall apart anymore. Therefore, I'm still grounded. I'm still loving myself and meeting myself in the unmet needs. So I continue to show up in use the relationship as an example because that's what we're speaking to. I now show up still in a form of connection as opposed to I'm pissed off and create more disconnect.
I think as well I have those thoughts where I'm like, don't ask him for another hug. Like, you're sweet. Like I know that what I'm doing is a pattern of something that I feel like I know it more confidently now that I've been sitting with you. And even just like unpacking that and having that conversation, I look back on my life and I'm like, no wonder why I showed up in those areas like that. And like almost have like, what would the word be? Like not gratitude, but like kindness towards myself for like doing the best that I knew, but I actually really did not realize how avoidant I actually am until this conversation.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. And this is the beautiful thing about conversations like this. You know, often, you know, we have all this wisdom and even all this knowledge and practice, but we can't see our own blind spots. And that's why community or friendships are so important. It's like I'm going to have friends around me that are going to help me see my blind spots and even call me forward into my blind spots as opposed to, no, you're all good, bro. That's the power of friendship. So, and something else I want to come back to is, you know, you're looking at your partner and saying, oh, I don't want to ask somebody for another hug. I would say continue to and up the asking for a hug. Why? Because the little girl didn't ask for the hug and she didn't get it. So you've actually started to already rewrite that pattern of like, can I have a hug? And whilst you're in practice of asking your partner for a hug, ensure that you turn the fingers back at the same time and ask yourself for hugs as well. Because then you're being met from external and internal.
This is going to sound weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. I feel like I've just met myself. I feel like I just grounded with myself from this conversation. I know that's probably, people will probably hear that and be like, what do you mean by that? But I'm sure you kind of
I
understand that.
Yeah.
And I feel over the next 24 hours that will continue.
The beautiful thing right now that I believe is playing out is, you know, this thing that we call the work that you and I do every single day. And often people are in the general work. Let's use breath work or meditation. Oh yeah, I breathed and I meditated. And I'm like, on what? I don't know, I just breathe and meditate because that's what everyone does, isn't it?
So true.
But partially what we've done today is like, okay, there's this thing we call the work, and then you shared your story. Now we've got pinpoint accuracy to what your unmet needs were or what your experiences were. So now we're speaking to that as opposed to the general. That's where you're like, I feel like I'm fucking meeting myself at the moment.
The other thing that I'm like, why has no other therapist done this with me before? The amount of money and people I speak to, like I've never, the way that you've like explained this, I can't even explain it. Like, I feel like so often it's just like talk therapy and like talk about this, but no one ever really goes as deep. Like, I think it's really the questions that you ask.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that are incredible, but from my own experiences, I'm like, I'm 30 and I'm just having this like incredible conversation now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But divine timing, right?
Absolutely. Everything happens when it's supposed to happen, and you were ready for this conversation today. You've potentially already had this conversation, but you weren't ready to hear it. But today you've opened up and you're like, hey, I'm ready to hear it now, so now it's all landing for you. That said, all those other conversations where you may not have heard it were preparation for this conversation so that it does land.
True. Wow.
I want to come back to something you said earlier. You know, you talked about that blockage.
Yeah.
And you also spoke to, I can't move forward in this work, aka another way of saying it's potentially even life.
Yeah.
Until I understand what this blockage is and how to move through it. So can you speak to me and share, what does this blockage feel like? What's your experience of this blockage?
I just have to think a little bit on how to explain it. Well, I think it's almost like a disconnect to self. It's like a really thick wall, almost like a brick wall. And I envision it as like in between me and whatever's on the other side. Like it's, I don't really know how to explain it. And then sometimes I feel like I find ways like, we'll try and go up, we'll try and go to the side. Bounce off the wall, but there's something there that is either I think maybe I'm not ready to process, or I tell myself that. I don't really know.
Yeah. The last time that you consciously experienced this blockage, are you able to share that experience with me?
The last time I experienced this blockage, well, it comes up for me a lot in business. And I feel like I hold myself back a lot. It's like, and then I try to distract myself. Like I can't focus then because I'm distract. So I don't think about it. And then I procrastinate. And then I'm like, why am I doing that? That's stopping me from getting to where I want. But it's like, oh, let's go around the side and let's go for a little walk and let's have a cup of tea. Like, I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but that's just what's coming up.
Makes complete sense. When you talk about business and then you find yourself distracted and procrastinating, in this procrastination, what are the feelings that are coming up in your body?
I'm like, not enough. Yeah, like you're not worthy to keep going.
Yeah.
Like, just pipe down, sis.
Absolutely. And that was going to be my next question. What's the story you're telling yourself in this procrastination and distraction? And then let's again reflect back to your opening share and reflection of your childhood. We had a little girl that felt like she wasn't enough. In particular, in the relationship that she had with her dad.
Whoa. So how do I stop that?
That's a really good question. Before we get to that part,
yeah.
You know, I want to talk about, if you were to do the thing and remove the distraction and the procrastination, that would mean I would get the thing that I wanted, that I want. It's going to make me better. Therefore, affirm that I'm enough. However, that wound of I am enough is still driving your life.
Even when you say, like, you know, you work through it and you get what you deserve, I'm like, what? That happens? That's a thing?
Yeah. So you have a belief system. It's like, oh, that's not true. But me distracting myself and procrastinating and staying small is in alignment with my current belief system, because I'm not enough only gets me this much in life.
Whoa. So how do I stop that?
That's a really good question. The things that we've been speaking about are going to help you remove the procrastination. They're going to help you move through the distractions and go, oh, I see a lot more clearly now. And what do I mean by this? Is, okay, that hurt and that pain that you keep avoiding through all the patterns that you've created in your life is actually where you need to go back to and address. You address that hurt and that pain, you'll break through so many barriers or limiting beliefs that you currently have, which will create space. And I say create space, not create I am enough. It'll create space. And then the work after that is then go and have practices to create I am enough now.
Whoa.
So the blockage that you're experiencing, if we want to bring vocabulary to it, is I am not enough. Every time it shows up.
Every time I feel it.
Okay, where am I experiencing this? My body. Okay, let's go back to the little girl and she experienced I'm not enough. Okay, in those experiences, what did she need as opposed to what did she receive? Okay, that's what I'm needing right now in my adult life. Boom, meet those needs. Okay, when it shows up again, what were the unmet needs of the little girl and I am not enough experiences? Boom, meet that need again and again and again.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is it all making sense and landing for you?
Like fully. Like I'm just on my own little journey over here. And it's almost like from our last conversation that we had last week, it all kind of started to land, even though we weren't talking about me. Because some of the things that we are talking about is like what we spoke about, but in a different kind of scenario in a way. And I feel like I started to have these realizations and like things come up. And then that's why when I was like, oh, let's do, a second podcast, I was like, let's do it straight away. So I'm ready. I'm ready. Like, I think that's why I was like, I messaged you like 20 minutes after. And Emily, the producer, was like, oh, maybe give him some time. I was like, nah, like, let's make it happen. I was like, if he's not open to it, then I'm sure he wouldn't do it. But
before you jump further,
yeah, go, please.
What was this? There's two things here. You like, boom, 20 minutes. I'm just going to do it. There was even a voice saying, "Oh, don't just give him some space and time." What was the story that you were telling yourself, and what was one feeling you were feeling in your body that helped you and supported you to go, no, boom, and do the thing?
To actually send the message. Yeah. This is going to be super impactful. Don't let it get away. Like it was like, jump on that.
Yeah.
Opportunity of helping others make change.
Cool. So there's the story that you're telling yourself. What was one of the feelings that you were feeling to support you to?
I guess like empowered, like, I don't know, to kind of like go for it.
And where were you feeling that empowerment in your body?
Everywhere, like full body.
Okay, cool. So a practice that I would invite you to commit to is feeling that feeling of empowerment over your whole body. Practice that every single day. And the story of this is going to have so much impact. And I'm going to validate for others, but I want you to turn the fingers back and say, for me and my life. Because when you have impact in your life, the byproduct of that is others. You don't have to worry about others. So I want you to practice that sentence every single day in here and even verbally express it onto the universe. And at the same time you're practicing that, allow your body to feel that feeling that you felt again and again and again. And do it consistently and frequently, so much so that you are so embodied in this that when that procrastination or that distraction wants to show up when you want to do the thing in business, you'll do the thing now because your body and your mind are in alignment because you've been practicing.
I love how this podcast is just so naturally, it's like what you said, it just naturally fell into place. Like even you asking me that question, what was the thing that made you jump into sending that message and feeling full, but I'm like, whoa, wow.
Does that land to make sense for you?
So much sense.
You talked about how.
Yes.
Okay, that's the how.
Yes.
And so many people want to overcomplicate the how. Well, the how actually needs to be really simple. And it's bite sizes. And bite sizes put together becomes the bigger picture.
Definitely.
Because our subconscious mind does not like change. Therefore, we're going to do it in small increments.
Definitely.
So those small increments plus simplicity of just a sentence, of just allowing myself to body to experience this feeling every single day, boom, I look up and my life has changed. I've done all the things that I've been saying I want to do in business.
Well, even you breaking it down like that makes me feel like it's more achievable. When you say that's what you need to feel and that's what you need to say, I'm like, okay, I can do that. You know, sometimes with other therapists or things like that, it's like all these different things and we focus on this and we focus on that and then you do this technique and you do that technique and learn about this and it's like, where am I actually making change because I'm focusing on so many different things?
Yeah. It's a form of self-sabotage I'm gonna commit to 10 things, and that's so overwhelming that I actually do nothing.
Yeah, and then you just freeze.
So it's like there were 10 amazing things that actually landed for me in this session or over the last week in my life of reflection. However, I'm committing to one thing, and I'm going to master that one thing. And when I've mastered that one thing, it automatically flows into my life. Okay, now look at what's the second thing. Boom, now I'm going to master that. And all of a sudden, in a year's time, I've now mastered all those 10 things that I used to avoid because it was too overwhelming.
So once I've mastered this, can we have another catch up?
Yeah, of course.
Please.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Lots for me to like unpack and unravel. And I think so many people, like, not just, the way that you explained it, I feel like is so easy to digest. Like anyone listening to this podcast can really implement everything that you have shared, which makes me very happy.
Yeah, perfect. One last thing I'd love for us to finish on is,
please.
What are 2 things that have resonated the most with you in the past 45 minutes?
I think how avoidant I was, how disconnected I was. And then, well, so much, like the whole 45 minutes, but I'm just trying to think how to explain it. Yeah, like how disconnected I potentially was to myself, which was a coping and protection mechanism, I would say.
Yeah.
And how to move forward, essentially.
Yeah, cool.
Rather than sitting like, what's next, or, like, rather than thinking like, will I speak to dad, or, fuck no, I'm never speaking to dad. Let's turn it back to me, feel this, and do that little thing, like step in and say that sentence every single day.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Yeah,
Start with this.
Yeah, cool. So the 2 things that I heard you just say that landed the most for you was, okay, the avoidance of that hurt and that pain. And then, okay, how do I step forward, or how do I move forward? Cool. So I think for the next 7 days, if you're open to it, I would invite you to address that hurt and that pain. And I'll give you a simple way to address it. However, you can choose, like, that landed for me or it didn't.
Yeah.
And I would say create, some time and space for you, and then write a letter to that little girl and all the experiences that created hurt and pain, and write it from adult self, so that the little girl can say, oh, someone actually sees me and understands all my pain. And something I like to do when I'm doing practices like this is, once I've completed this letter and expression of this hurt and pain, is I use the element of fire to let the universe take care of it now. And that's the completion of letting go, and then we create space through that practice. And what you've done is create space internally for you. Okay, what do I want to put inside of that space? Okay, let's go back to the conversation of the business. Okay, maybe it's the move forward, and the how-to is that sentence and that feeling that you've already experienced. We didn't come up with it. You experienced it last week. So be in deep practice of that for the next 7 days. Both of those 2 things are going to help you to heal and grow and move forward.
That I can do. I've actually got blessing in disguise. I've got the weekend to myself.
Amazing.
And I was like, what am I going to do? But I think, that will be my time. And I definitely feel ready. Having this conversation makes me feel ready, because I feel like I've got direction and I understand what I need to do.
Yep. Pinpoint accuracy. You're doing the work now for you and not for humans in general.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being open to having this conversation.
Definitely.
And obviously I know something that's really important to you is impact with others. And I just want to reinforce one more time, the byproduct of you having impact in your own life will flow out onto many others who need to hear your message.
Thank you. I really needed that. And I'm so grateful and very, very blessed for us to have this space and this time to do this. So thank you again. And until next time.
Until next time.